All right. Well, Elon Musk maintains that his company Starlink is being denied a license in South Africa because he's not black. The South African-born billionaire was speaking during an interview at the Qatar Economic Forum. This is despite Bloomberg reporting that South Africa will offer Musk a BEE workaround through investment in local infrastructure, training, or through internet kits to rural communities. His comments do come as President Cyril Ramaphosa and his team were about to meet and strategize for their meeting today with Musk's close ally, that's US President Donald Trump. For more on this discussion, let's bring in tech expert Aki Anastasiou. Aki, it's a good morning to you. Thank you so much for the time as well this morning. What is Starlink?
Hey, good morning to you, Arabella. It's good to be with you. Well, Starlink is basically a network of satellites that basically connect and offer connectivity to really remote parts of the world. And these satellites are typically very different to what you would be broadcasting on right now, which is the DStv satellite high up above the Earth's surface. A typical satellite broadcasting right now on cable television is sitting at about 36,000 kilometers above the Earth's surface. These satellites, the Starlink ones, are sitting around 600 kilometers above the Earth's surface, and they weigh about 280 kilograms. They're about 7 meters high and 3 meters wide. There are about 8,000 of them that are just around the surface of the Earth, and they call themselves low-orbit satellites. So that's the clear definition over here. They have competition, but typically what these do is they sit around the 600-kilometer range above the Earth. There are ground stations on Earth that act as gateways. They send the data up to the satellites. They've got about, I would say about 150 of those ground, those ground gateways. There are a couple in Africa as well. There's in Nigeria. They've got them in Mozambique, from what I understand. There's in Kenya as well. And typically what happens is that you as a user will have a receiver. It looks similar to a satellite dish that you'd have for DStv, but it's slightly flatter. And what you do is you just connect to the internet in the same way you do with regular internet. Typically, Starlink offers download speeds of between 40 and 220 megabits per second and upload speeds from 8 to 25. And they also have some new technology as well, which is called direct-to-cell service, that allows some phones to connect directly to Starlink satellites. But that's still in trial, and they're testing it at around some parts of the world. But that's essentially how Starlink works. And of course, the advantage that they have is because Elon Musk owns SpaceX and they use their Falcon 9 launchers, and every single week they're launching various satellites and just improving on that connectivity. So ultimately, Arabella, the aim is to basically blanket that low orbit around Earth and just cover and really connect and provide internet connectivity down to Earth. And also many aircraft. So when you're up in an airplane and you're traveling, a long distance, the connectivity, the internet connectivity on many planes, many of the times comes from a Starlink link.
So which is it then, Aki, that has more traffic? The N3 during the festive season or the low orbit around Earth at present? Because with the number of these satellites, that just means that there's great competition, there's great connectivity, but also there's a massive impact on global connectivity here.
No, absolutely. Look, let's be honest here. Fiber connectivity is the best kind of connectivity. Then you've got the cell phone networks who provide 3G and 4G and LTE and 5G services. But let's remember that 38% of Africa's population as of the end of 2024 had access to the internet compared to international standards, which sits at 68%. Now, here in South Africa, that is a lot higher because we've got a more mature market. But more than half of this continent doesn't have internet connectivity, and that's because there are many people sitting in many of the rural areas and really far out areas. So you ask if it's going to impact and the competition and that sort of thing. I guess that there is a large element of this connectivity that is underserved and is not served at all. So people want that kind of connectivity. And then of course the mobile networks, which really provide and have these mobile towers all over different countries. They provide connectivity to people, but mainly in urban areas. You'll find that often in rural areas or areas that have got low population densities don't often have internet connectivity.
So does this mean that the current internet network, telephone, mobile phone providers, their struggle is going to be in growing any further than they have right now, because their growth would have come from areas that they probably don't serve. But if those places are now served by Starlink, it changes the game completely.
It does and it doesn't. And yes, there will be competition to those people, but sometimes it's expensive to get a fiber cable to a remote area for, say, a population of 100 people, for example, and then provide the link of a 5G link or LTE, wherever it might be. That's typically how a mobile network operator would operate. But now with Starlink, it's a lot easier to access that community, because the users on the ground just buy the hardware and they pay a small fee a month, and then they've got this access directly from a satellite coming down to you. So the costs of setting up are distinctly lower. But I guess that every time a community gets bigger and bigger, it does become more feasible for the mobile networks. But ultimately, it's going to affect mobile networks, because they now might not have access to that community, and they will have to outlay capital to get to that particular community, which costs money, and then the return on investment might not be as profitable as, say, in an urban area.
Yeah. So who benefits most here? Yes, we talk about customers, of course, who will then eventually have the network. But I mean, in terms of the network providers themselves, are they going to be looking at trying to get themselves into a similar race at some stage, trying to get satellites into space, meaning even greater competition? Or is this pretty much Starlink's own territory?
Well, look, Starlink does have competition. Amazon is doing the same thing, and there are other competitors in the market as well. I think there's about 5 of them at the moment. But as I mentioned earlier, the Starlink has the advantage of them being, part of SpaceX and having the ability to launch multiple satellites at many different times. But for mobile network companies to be able to do the same is going to be very challenging, because it's costly to launch these kind of satellites. Where these satellites are going to be helping people, it's really going to act as redundancy. So basically, mines that are in remote areas that want a backup system to be able to connect to the internet and want access to the internet. Then you've got those communities that don't have any kind of access or to the internet. So it'll benefit those kind of communities as well. It'll benefit retailers and businesses that are operating in remote areas. People like farms, for example, that need that internet connectivity. And of course, Arabile, we're living in an age today where it's critical to have high-speed internet connectivity, because farms today are very much digital. Mines are digital. They use Internet of Things, and they've got very sophisticated technology that's embedded in their equipment that farms. So they really need this kind of connectivity to be future-proof going into the future.
Yeah, look, we could try and talk about the legal procedures thereof, but we're not going to delve into that then, Aki, as well. But there are question marks around tech firms and their ability to source and find people's information. And one key risk here could be that you have this outside source coming in and perhaps could have access to all of our data. How much of a pertinent risk is that?
Well, listen, we trust a lot. They're a very reputable company. I could use the same argument with mobile networks, with your fiber connectivity. But I can tell you that the data, where it comes down to your machine and where you upload the information, it's all encrypted data. So it is very secure and very safe. And they often connect to hyperscalers, the likes of Google and Microsoft. So they have their equipment and those base stations that upload the data that goes up into the satellite and the data that comes down to you. Many of those base stations that they use to upload the data are sitting at those hyperscalers, as I mentioned, the likes of Google, the likes of Microsoft. So your data is secure and it's encrypted.
So your call, good or bad for South Africa to get Starlink if it is indeed mooted to happen?
Look, I think it's a great call. I think that it will give an option to people who are not being served by any kind of internet connectivity. It's an affordable plan. They start as low as $28 to $34 per month in different countries. The initial setup cost is the equipment and the infrastructure, but I think it's a good thing to have it in South Africa because it really empowers people and it gives people connectivity, not only just in South Africa, and we've seen the impact that it's had in the countries like Mozambique and Nigeria and Kenya, for example. We have remote communities that have internet access for the first time, and that in itself is powering, and that in itself has long-term effects on economies and uplifting communities and adding to the GDP and giving communities the benefit of connecting to the internet and allowing them to start businesses and to really be connected to the World Wide Web. So I think it's a very, very positive thing for South Africa.